Incense burning, all space is filled with the fragrance. All Buddhas smell it from afar. Auspicious clouds gather everywhere. With utmost sincerity, all Buddhas appear. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage, we offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Surprise. Venerable is on her way to Vermont, where it's much colder up there. She's in meetings. And so we will hold down the fort and continue what we started a couple of classes ago. And just as a reminder, in case you weren't here for those classes, I wasn't here when Busita did her talk. I was down in Charlotte for the Katina ceremony, which was an incredible experience. First time I'd ever been to a Katina robe ceremony. And I'll save that for another Dharma talk, or two or three. It was quite the experience. And my wonderful Sangha, when I got home on Sunday, were waiting at the table for a story time. And so the best of my ability, because I was very tired, having driven down, driven back, and then been up for most of the time, I share, but there's far more, and I'll be happy to share that with you. But for now, let's travel backwards. Let's go back to Sunday and the attachment to self talk. That was Sunday, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Attachment to self. Attachment to self. What does that mean to you? That's a rhetorical question. I don't need you to answer, but I think it's important to really look at what that means for you. How that dances out for you. When it shows up for you. Because we know there are times when attachment to self shows up when you least expect it or want it to show up. And sometimes it's about, wow, where did that come from? And then if you are willing and stepping back, you can look at, yeah, you know where that came from. You know what that's about. Sometimes it's what I call the 2x4. You know, when you think you've got things all lined up and able to manage things, and then whack. You think, wow. And sometimes it's, did I do that again? I thought I got through that. I thought I was, and that's probably true, but for this lifetime, we will have many 2x4s. And a lot of that, as Pusita shared, I did watch her, the recording, that's the one thing we have to focus on. That's the number one thing, attachment to self. It's the root of all suffering. So the next question I'm going to ask you is, so how much attention do you pay to that? If that's the root of all suffering, how much attention do you pay to that? When you're by yourself and when you're with others and when you're in a crowd, attachment to self. And if you don't know what that looks like for you, it's really time to start looking. Because as we studied a while back, there's no time to lose. There's no time to lose. If that's the root of suffering, and that's what the Buddha says, and that's what the Buddha Master says. Along the way, Vasita gave us an opportunity to look at examples of how to erode attachment to self. So you don't just gotta sit there with it and think, now what do I do? She gave us some opportunity to look at things to do. And just like about anything else, you got to do them. But a couple examples were prostrations. Now, 2 knee replacements and a hip replacement in 2 years, I'm not doing full prostrations, but I do them. I do them at my altar. I do them when we're down in our meditation room, sitting. So we can modify prostrations. How does that give up attachment to self? She kind of talked about that. If you're doing prostrations, especially if you're doing full prostrations, it's a prime example of how that's giving up. Especially if you've got 2 new knee replacements and a hip replacement, and you're trying to get down. Last weekend, I was trying to get down, and I had to give up my attachment to self at that point, because it was really hard to get back up. And between Venerable and I, we were helping each other up. That was quite a scene. But physically, attachment to self. There were other things, I guess I'm going to drop into that weekend. I was with a sisterhood of bhikkhunis, and it was quite wonderful and very challenging. Theravadan bhikkhunis. And one was a bhikkhuni who's considered the elder, although she's probably the youngest of all of us because she ordained at 14 or 12 or something. She's from Sri Lanka. And she was there, and it was such a delight to see her again. There was one bhikkhuni from California, or maybe 2, Sudama, who is from Charlotte. There was a bhikkhuni from Sri Lanka who just took ordination a year ago. And so the way it works is that you always sit in line and you walk in line from eldest to youngest in terms of ordination. So I wasn't the last. I was the second to the last. And but there were many, many things that we had to chant, many things around the rules to do that I haven't really learned. And there were 7 of us, which isn't very many. And so if someone doesn't know it, it's going to stand out. So I had my mind. I had attachment to knowing and not feeling stupid or not feeling like I don't know what I'm doing. You know, in 3 years of being a bhikkhuni, I know a lot, it feels, but nothing like that. That was hard. That was hard. There's a lot of talking going on, a lot of suffering going on until I finally laid it down. Attachment to self. So right there's physical attachment and there's mental, emotional attachment. You with me? Mm-hmm. Are you relating? Where are you going with where this fits for you? The physical, the emotional, the psychological, the social? I mean, that's a lot of suffering that we create. So let's get to share prostrations. It's a great example of how to do a number of things throughout the prostrations, not just the physical. She talked about Lojong mind training and pithy statements that you can carry with you. She talked about the 4 immeasurable states of mind. She talked about Tonglen, and she talked about a number of other ones. She also talked about cultivation, stepping out into the world, how you carry this out in the world. Because if you do your prostrations, however way you do it, in front of your altar, and that's where it stays, it does you no good. It does you no good. And I know I've said this many times, it's those threshold moments when you step out of your room, step out of your door, step out of your car, and then you're presented to the world. And how are you going to be? And what are you going to take with you? As I used to say with the kids, what's in your backpack that you can pull and use when you need it? And I'm sure you all have your backpack, right? Something to carry, not a real backpack, but your backpack of tools, of skill sets. So in so many ways, Busita, thank you for setting the stage, because then on Tuesday, I think just about everybody was here that was here on Tuesday. Venerable and Brian stepped us into meditation. And you remember the 3 meditations that she did?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what was the first one?
Contemplating the body and how it's composed of elements.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The elements. The second one was Anapanasati. And the third one was
Delighting your mind with Dharma.
delighting your mind with Dharma. And she used the King of Prayers. And she really belted it out. And then Brian had to bring us into Tonglen after each of those. What a wonderful way to settle ourselves, to calm ourselves, and then do the work that we're here to do. Do the work that we're here to do. And that's just in meditation. And like everything else, once you step off the cushion or the chair and go out, you bring that with you. If you have that awareness, if you're in tune. Otherwise, you're attaching to self, because all those work at that. All those do. And if we put our blinders up, we're stuck in so many ways. And this world gives us something all day long to work with. Even when you stay in a monastery in your own little room, the world has something to work with on you. So when Brian and Venerable did the meditations, she said that meditation is an arrival of a state based on certain methods. I love that. Meditation is an arrival of a state based on certain methods. So we come to it. We come to it. It just doesn't happen. We set the stage. We're going to have, here it is November, and we're going to have Thanksgiving, most of us, and you set the table. You prepare the meal, and you just don't do it the morning of. It's not a fast food kind of meal for the most part. Most people, many people, if they have the means to have Thanksgiving, are already planning. If you go into the stores, Halloween is a past. Even Christmas is happening out there, but mostly Thanksgiving. You plan for it. You anticipate it. You organize it. And then if you're going to be doing the meal, you don't wait till that morning and go, now, when should we put the turkey, and if we're having a turkey, and should we put the potatoes? If you have more than a few things, and many people do not, and I'll certainly pause for a second to think of them, but if you have the means and you have the food and you have the people that are going to join you, you don't just wait till that morning for the most part. So you go and get the food, and then you think, okay, I'm going to have this, so-and-so might be bringing that, and then I'm going to be planning. I'm going to be organizing. And some people are up early in the morning, and then there's a lot of action happening before you finally sit down to that table and look at what you got. Do we do that with meditation? You know, we probably go screeching in, land on the chair, land on the pillow, and then get up and go. Oh, no. So they spent some time with us on Tuesday, Brian and Venerable. And they took us through calm abiding, where we all just settled. That's my favorite part of the day. Visualization. And the King of Prayers gave us an opportunity to do a visualization. We also did a visualization of where the air comes in and where it goes out. Not where it goes once it goes into the body, but just that point, that spot. And the contemplative illumination. She asked us at the end of our time on Tuesday to use one method and to practice it twice a day for the next week. How many people did that? Is that okay? So here's the opportunity. We're going to do it again. So that was Tuesday. Sunday was Visita and attachment to self. Because in the end, when we finish with meditation, where we're going with Venerable in the next weeks, attachment to self is going to be left behind. So we start with that, and we've gotten various opportunities to learn how and where and when. They gave us on Tuesday 3 ways of doing meditation. There might be, and she said, many more, but specifically to do those kind of 3 things. And for you to not just do them, but then to think about what are you going to do once you leave that meditation spot, once you walk out the door, once you walk into the next room, once you go to that grocery store that is going to get pretty busy in the next few weeks. And I will guarantee this, that if you do 2 times a day between now and that Thanksgiving day, oh no, she said.
Sorry. It's not going to.
Okay.
Thank you, sorry.
No attachment. I can guarantee that if you do this twice a day between now and that day called Thanksgiving, you'll have a different experience. I'll guarantee that. And you report back to me the day after Thanksgiving and tell me if it wasn't so. If in fact you did 2 times a day between now and Thanksgiving on Friday, I will wait for you all to come and tell me you were so right. Because I think it will be right. I think it will be right. So all of those, I'm going to talk to you about the 4 immeasurables. Anybody know what they are?
Loving kindness.
Okay, that's one.
Okay.
Loving kindness. Most of us learn it in order, but not always. What's another one?
Wishing for peace and happiness.
Wishing for peace and happiness. For like compassion? Compassion. Mm-hmm. What was that?
Generosity.
Generosity, that would be a paramita. So it's sympathetic joy. Equanimity. Yeah. So loving kindness. Compassion. Sympathetic joy or altruistic joy, or what I try to use because it feels better for me, appreciative joy. And the last one is equanimity. Does anybody know what other names are called the four immeasurables? If you look them up, for the longest time early on, I got so confused because sometimes they're the four divine abodes. Sometimes they're four limitless ones. Sometimes they're four sublime attitudes. Sometimes they're four divine states. Sometimes they're boundless qualities or states. And there are others. But what's one thing that stays true for all those? Divine abode, limitless, sublime, divine, boundless quality states. Who wouldn't want to spend time with those? Who wouldn't want to spend time with those? What we know about those, and I'll just refer to them as the four limitless, is that they all carry the load. If we got those, we got everything. Yes, there's precepts, and they're important. And I really was reminded of those this last weekend because the Kunis have many, like more than 100 and more than 200 and more than 300. They're important. But the limitless qualities carry the load. Think about it. Think about it. These mind states are not emotions. Don't get that wrong. They're not emotions. They're states. And we want to get to those states. They're qualities of the mind and the heart. And they're inherent to our basic human nature, our core. All four of those. Now, if that doesn't get you to want to know them and practice them and be with them, what's left? We cultivate those through meditation and our practice, and we carry them with us out into the world. So let's spend a little more time. Another name for loving kindness is metta. Metta. Goodwill. A desire for the welfare and happiness of all beings without discrimination of selfish attachment. That's a definition you might find if you look it up. Desire for the welfare and happiness of all beings without discrimination or selfish attachment. Every time we narrow our vision of what we really are, we become afraid and out of love. Every time we narrow our field, every time we become small, we become afraid. Most issues, I would say, not all probably, but most result from fear. Fear of some sort. And so when we go small, we fall out of love and we become afraid. A contemplative practice can remind us that we are so much a part of a continuum of all this. To really sit and contemplate. Not just read and just think we know the words. This abode is extremely relational. It requires a relationship for loving kindness to all sentient beings, beginning with ourselves. If we don't love ourselves, if we don't care for ourselves, can't get out there and be there for others. Loving kindness. Talk about it all the time. But do we really know what it means? And that's my intent today. Karuna, compassion. Empathy with the suffering of others. When I worked in the schools, they wanted us to teach compassion. And I can tell you, I still strongly believe you can't teach it. You can't teach it. We were teaching a mindfulness program, and part of it was compassion. And you open the book and it's just blah, 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 blah. Compassion comes from all the others that we do, all the awarenesses that we have, the role modeling that we see by others. That's where compassion comes from. When someone shows you some compassion, you receive compassion, and then it's less likely that you hold it, but then you give it back. When I was in graduate school, we had a professor that would give us exams, and they reminded me of when I was in junior high, because it was a definition, and she would ask for a definition. And I now, to this day, I don't remember anything else from that particular class except what is a group? What is a group? Okay, and I got all the points. A group is 3 or more people. She circled the words and I got the points. That's how good education can be. That's how good our studies can be. If that's all we do, we spit out the words. So when I was in the schools, it was a K-8, as you mostly all know, and we were teaching a mindfulness program, and they were saying, what about compassion? And I said, compassion will happen once the children get these other aspects of the program. And we couldn't teach it, really. We just couldn't teach it. And part of my job was to go out on the playground, which I absolutely loved, to be out there with the kids. And I saw our work in action. Not because we taught it, not because we had a definition of it, but because the kids saw others being compassionate, but because they saw the other aspects of what we were teaching them, which contributed to compassion. They learned to breathe. They learned to support others. And so when that kindergarten, and I know I probably shared this, but kindergartner fell, and when 5-year-olds fall, there's certain you need to call 911 because, I got to go to the hospital and all it is a little scratch. And the little ones, I didn't even have to go across the playground. The little ones would go and say, it's okay, let's breathe together. Let's breathe together. That skill, because they learn that if you breathe, your system slows down. But also, I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. That's what compassion says. Doesn't require a whole lot of words. They were patting on the back. I still have this vision of it. And I just watched it. And then they decided, Miss Jean, I was Jean then, Miss Jean, we got to go to the office and get a Band-Aid. And I looked at it and I went, oh, yeah. There's hardly anything there, but a Band-Aid would fix just about anything. And in that particular school, in that particular year, it went on and on. Compassion happened. After school, papers would normally be on the floor. Kids would pick them up and put it in the trash can or in the recycle bin. They would help each other. I didn't teach compassion. I was teaching every single class that year. I didn't teach them compassion. I taught them about the brain, and I taught them about how to breathe and what that does. I taught them all that stuff, but I didn't teach them compassion. Compassionate desire to remove suffering. Now, the key is how you do it. How you do it. If you're hurting and I come in and, by God, I'm going to fix it, you're not going to love me anymore, right? But it's to help support someone moving through suffering. Nancy, you're going to say something?
What I hear is, through your examples, is what I was taught is that empathy is that feeling and stuff, but compassion is an action.
Mm-hmm.
It's whether it's just the being with or other ways of demonstrating that it is a movement.
Sorry.
Are you trying to get the ceiling, Mike?
Yeah, because it's kind of
Yeah.
low, so. it's okay.
It is, it's an action word.
Compaction.
To develop compassion, we have to learn to be open to suffering. You know, some of us hide away from suffering. Someone starts hurting or crying. Someone has a lost one. I don't want to go there. I can't deal with it because in most cases we've grown up with that's just, we don't deal with that. When I was a child and I would cry, which is the only way my dad would pay attention to me because I had something I needed to say, and I would cry. And then my mom would say, Bob, just listen to her. That's what it took. Because he didn't grow up with compassion, emotion, or even family. And when I understood that, I could appreciate his lack of skill set for what my needs were. It first must begin with our own suffering and recognize our own suffering and look at that, not just, oh yeah, it's there, or that's just who I am, but to really look at suffering, our own suffering, and where it shows up and how it dances out in our world. Compassion, you know, we hear it all the time, but it's not an idealized state. It's not something, it's an action word. It's the ability to feel another's suffering. It's interactive. Mudita, appreciative joy, or sympathetic joy, or altruistic joy. It's the joy produced by someone else's good fortune. Do you say, I'm so happy you got that job, but in the back of your mind saying, this should have been mine. That was my job. I worked really hard to get it. I'm so happy for you. Isn't that real, right? It's not real. It takes work sometimes to appreciate the joy when we think it should have been ours, or if only I could have. You know, I've been able to go on a lot of trips in the last 2 years because they were organized and paid for years before COVID. And then COVID happened. So they finally caught up and like, wow, you've really traveled a lot. That's great. I wish I could travel like you, you know. Yeah, that could be appreciative joy. Unconditional. Unconditional. And in some way, it can transform our own suffering if we truly can be authentic. Can truly be authentic. And we do it a lot around here. We do a lot of appreciative joy by giving merit. At the end of our Dharma talks, at the end of our classes, at the end of sitting, we give merit. And finally, upekkha, equanimity. Now in my notes, I've got this much, this much, this much, and the fourth one goes down to the half a page and onto the other side. And why is that? Why is it? Because that's the foundation of all the others. How is that possible? What is equanimity? It's balance. It's finding, you know, the teeter-totter. I don't know if when you were a kid, but we used to get up in the center and try to see if we could keep it balanced without anybody on either side. Because you know, if you go too much on one side or too much on the other, it bumps, and then you could bump off. So you find just right. Even-mindedness. Even-mindedness. There's impartiality. It's even, it's balanced, it's stable, it's stability of the mind. It's groundedness and letting go. Boundless qualities of loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy stem from equanimity. Because how in the world can you have any of the others if you're all worked up about something? How can you even see the needs of others if you're not focused and not centered and not balanced and not grounded? And even if you do see it, what's the possibility of it being authentic and true and real if you're all worked up or redirected into something else? Now that happens because we've got a lot going on, but to the best of our abilities to find equanimity. I read a book and I'm still working through it because it's a huge, thick book and it's written by Ken Wilber. And it's called Grace and Grit. Has anybody read that? Mm-hmm. So there it all is, all four immeasurables. And Grace and Grit is his story, her story, his wife's story about their lives together during the course of them finding each other, her getting sick, her having cancer, them going through treatments, her having the treatments, her being free of the cancer, and everybody's joyful and happy, and then it comes back. Then it comes back. And then it comes back. So you look at that instability. It's the book is written really beautifully. It's sections. He tells a section, and she does from her point of view, and then he does, and she does. And it's through the whole process of when they meet to when she dies. It's an amazing book. And it really speaks to all of what we're talking about today. You know, in our world, it's inconsistent. There's change all the time. All day long, there's change. You think you got something and then you don't. If you're an investor, you know what happens with the markets. And what do they tell you? Stay the course. Stay the course. Right? Because why? Everything's impermanent and it will come back around. We used to joke, don't sell those bell bottoms, they'll be back. And some of you don't know bell bottoms, maybe. The mind that has realized the truth of change and the truth of cause and effect is equanimity. Okay, once your mind gets that, impermanence, cause and effect, change, that's equanimity. You found the way. And our true work is to constantly be looking for that. So equanimity is the capacity to be in touch with suffering and at the same time, not be swept away from it or by it. My teacher down at Upaya, Roshi Joan Halifax, would say, strong back, soft front. That's equanimity. Strong back, soft front. You don't want to be so solid that you don't move, that you could break because you're so solid, but you don't want to be so soft that everything knocks the stuffing out of you. It takes both. That's the balance. And when life changes and you get that 2x4, when you have that balance, or you're aware of that balance, or you've experienced it, it will come easier and quicker to you. What kind of mind and heart can stay strong and open? Mind and heart stay strong and open in the midst of chaos. Back right out of high school, I became an X-ray tech. One of my favorite places was the emergency room. Why? There was action down there. There's a lot going on down there. And I have a temperament that's pretty steady. So I did pretty good down there. And I liked the fact that you had to really think on your feet. When a broken arm comes in and the book says, this is how you do it, and the broken arm is at 90 degrees an opposite angle of what it should be, you got to really think about it. And if you're all worked up and you're all nervous and you're all crazy, you're not going to be able to get it. You're not going to be able to get that x-ray. And the doctor needs that x-ray. And they need it now because it's probably impinging on nerves and blood vessels and all sorts of things. Equanimity allows us that radiant calm of peace and trust to receive the world, at the same time make it possible to let go of the work. Stepping in to receive the world and yet not cling and hold on to it. This is mine. This is how I know how to do it. I'm the one that can do this. I've got the experience. Equanimity. So we do the 4 limitless states of mind chant. May all living beings always be peaceful and happy and maintain the causes of peace and happiness. It's loving kindness. May all living beings always be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. That's compassion. May all living beings always be free from suffering, and my own heart, be delighted about this. Sympathetic joy. May all living beings stay far away from greed and anger and abide in non-differentiating generosity. It's equanimity. How many times have you said that and you really thought, what am I saying here? And is it my true wish? Is it my true wish? Now, where there's one upside, there's a downside, right? And so we'll call these, and many of you may have studied these, but the immeasurables have near and far enemies. Near and far enemies. So loving kindness, the near enemy, meaning one that's probably the easiest to get zapped by, is self-affection. Caring about yourself. Me, I, me, I. Sentimental attachment. Sentimental attachment. That was a word that was interesting when I read it. Another near enemy is stickiness. Loving kindness is sticky. Some of us are sticky in our attachments and our wanting to be loved and wanting to love. I want to love you. I love you. I want to be here for you. When all they really want is a little peace and quiet. A far enemy for loving kindness is ill will and hatred. You think of an example of hatred for loving kindness. It's everywhere right now. It's everywhere. You know, certainly if you go back, you know, with the Nazis, there's a lot of hating on Jews back then. And we've got it now in almost every community. There's something there going on around hatred and ill will. Compassion, the near enemy is pity. Pity. Oh, you poor thing. It's okay. And the far enemy is cruelty, cruelty, being cruel, being cruel. You know, you can see that on the playground. You can see it on the streets. Saying unkind things and you think you're joking, but really it hurts. It hurts. You think, oh, that wasn't, I didn't mean it. You see that a lot. In some ways, that would be a near enemy. Appreciative joy. The near enemy is exuberance. Someone that's so happy, it's so big, it's big, it's bold, it's all this. And sometimes it's fine, but sometimes for those people that's always. They come through the door big and bold and they stay big and bold. And that can be an enemy to joy because it usually doesn't feel that real. Hypocrisy or feigned appreciation. They say that's really a beautiful dress you have on, and when in the back of their mind say, oh man, is that so not right for that person? The far enemy of appreciative joy is resentment. Wish it was me. How come Soma got to go and I didn't? Jealousy, competitiveness. I can get this. I can get this done. I'm good at this. Clinging, preference, showing preference or aversion. So those are the four immeasurables, and a little bit about the far and near enemies that we probably experience in our world, in our lives, that we hold in some way. And I encourage you to really we'll just take 30 seconds, think about how you do these four immeasurables, how you experience them, how you share them, how you live them. And where do the near and far enemies come for you? Habitual tendencies. Because they're there, I promise you. They're there. Let's take 30 seconds. Okay. So now we're going to move into the last part of our class today. And I'm going to invite Brian. We're going to do a dance together up here again. Yeah. And we're going to do the same thing we did on Tuesday if you were here. We're going to do 3 meditations. And we're going to take a little extra time with them so that you can try to settle in and really feel it. Really feel it. So the first one, Venerable read Advice to Rahula. Advice to Rahula, if you remember that. And the Buddha said, Rahula, let your meditation be like this. So I'm going to just read a section of this because I think it says more than I could ever try to say. Then when it was morning, the Blessed One dressed and taking his bowl and outer robe, went into Savatthi for alms. The Venerable Rahula, also dressed and taking his bowl and outer robe, followed close behind the Blessed One. Then the Blessed One looked back and addressed the Venerable Rahula thus. Rahula, any kind of material form, whatever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all material form should be seen as it actually is, with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. Let's just swing back to Sunday and Visita's talk. There it is right there. I'm going to drop down. Only material form, blessed one, only material form, sublime one. Material form, Rahula, and feeling, perception, formations, and consciousness. Then the Venerable Rahula considered thus: who would go into the town for alms today, when personally admonished by the Blessed One? Thus he turned back and sat down at the root of a tree, folding his legs crosswise, setting his body erect and establishing mindfulness in front of him. The Venerable Sariputra saw him sitting there and addressed him thus: Rahula, develop mindfulness of breathing. When mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is of great fruit and great benefit. Then, when it was evening, the Venerable Rahula rose from meditation and went to the Blessed One. After paying homage to him, he sat down at one side and asked the Blessed One, Venerable Sir, how is mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated, so that it is of great fruit and great benefit? So then the Buddha moves on to the great elements. Rahula, whatever internally belonging to oneself is solid, solidified, and clung to, that is, head hairs, body hairs, nails, skin, teeth, flesh, sinews, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, goes on and on. Whatever else internally belonged to oneself is solid, solidified, and clung to. This is called internal earth element. Earth is one of the elements. And then he goes on and says this after each one: this is not mine, and I am not. This is not myself. And one becomes disenchanted with the earth element and makes the mind dispassionate towards the earth element. And that was key to what we were doing on Tuesday. One becomes disenchanted with the earth element. For those of you who are here, do you remember that? What, Rahula, is the water element? Another element. And we've got how many?
5.
5. Water. So now we've got earth and now water. Whatever internally belonging to oneself is water, watery and clung to, that is bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, and on. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. One becomes disenchanted with the water element and makes the mind dispassionate towards the water element. He goes on, what, Rahula, is a fire element? The fire element may be either internal or external. And then he goes on to describe that and says what again?
This is not mine.
This is not mine.
This I'm not.
This I am not.
This is not myself.
Become dispassionate. Okay, we're getting rid of all the elements. What, Rahula, is the air element? Internally belonging to oneself is air, airy, and clung to. That is upgoing winds, downgoing winds, and winds and limbs and breath, and on, out and in. Says it again. This is not mine. Become dispassionate. And then he says space element. So he's talked about all 5, and I'm not going to take the time. It is a great read, and I encourage you to read it. It's Sutta 62. The space element. What is the internal space element and clung to? That is the holes of the ears, the nostrils, the door of the mouth, and that whereby what is eaten, drunk, consumed. And again, he says, do not cling to this. Do not cling to this. So we are made up of mind, and we're made up of all the elements. So I'm going to start with this first meditation. And when you have settled in, and attempted to set your mind at ease, and relaxed into the place that you're sitting, just allow yourself to relax. Allow yourself to be here. And when words show up, let them land on the elements. And know the elements do not react and are not affected. You can say to yourself, I am comprised of earth, water, fire, air, and space. How can I be humiliated, disgusted? How can I be offended? Because I am made of earth, water, fire, air, and space. When thoughts rise up, don't entertain them. It becomes unnecessary. The training is to uproot that which is false and insignificant. As thoughts come, do not grasp. Just let them pass. There's no need to let those words or thoughts stick. Just stay in the abiding, in the present state. Pleasant abiding. Perhaps some contentment. Steadiness arises. Kind of peace and ease. And can penetrate to a deeper place. So much so, one is not disturbed by anything. Just this.
Now we'll transition to just a few minutes of Tonglen, which is again giving and then receiving. On your in-breath, visualize a heavy dark energy, which is pulling the suffering away from the person you're focusing on. And then there's a quick pause between the in-breath and the out-breath. And in the out-breath, that dark energy has been transformed through your heart, your compassionate heart, into a clear, refreshing light, radiating out through all 360 degrees through all the pores of your body to the person you're supporting. So again, you breathe in the dark energy and breathe out the clean, refreshing, loving kindness through all 360 degrees of the pores in your body. Let the in-breath be about as long as the out-breath. Bring to your mind a picture of the person you're supporting. Feel that release of energy on your out breath. And you sense that moment when that dark energy transforms into the clear, light, refreshing energy you send out. See if you can notice the difference in the sensations of your body on the in-breath and the out-breath. Now see if there's a group of people whom you want to support. Take that dark energy from them and their suffering, and through all 360-degree pores of your body, sending out loving kindness and compassion. We'll do this for one more minute.
As you come back into this room after this brief meditation, instead of on Tuesday, we talked about the experience. Today, I'm going to ask that you sit with your experience and quietly reflect on what we've just talked about today. The four immeasurables, the five elements. How did they show up? Did they get in the way of your practice? Were you able to allow yourself to stay relaxed into the meditation as Brian talked you into and through and out of Tonglen? When thoughts came in, were you able to let them slide into the elements and be with those thoughts like the elements would, which is no need to have these thoughts right now. Just letting them pass. Were you able to do that? Allowing the elements to do the work that they do. Training is to uproot that which is false and insignificant. And allow yourself to be in pleasant abiding, to encourage the contentment, the steadiness, the peace and ease. Okay. Now, readjust yourself. We'll out a little bit and we'll do the second meditation. Remember, the second meditation is anapanasati, which is concentration. That, by the way, was about 5 minutes. In this one, anapanasati, you're going to focus on the breath. And you're going to find one point where the outside air enters through your nose, where the air comes in. And just focus on that point, that spot. So take an inhalation where the air goes in and focus on that point. And then exhale the air out and notice that one spot. Don't follow the air. You simply keep your focus on that spot. Inhale, exhale. Simply stay at the spot where the air enters and notice the full air at the spot coming in and where the exhale comes out at that one spot. Again, don't follow the air, just stay at that spot. Like a gatekeeper, letting people in and out of the gate, not knowing where they've come from. And when they leave, not caring where they're going. Just watching that one spot where they enter through the gate. Focus on the breath in that spot and notice. Notice the air. Is it cool or warm? Slow or fast? Long or short? Smooth or ragged? Calm or rough? Just breathe in and breathe out. If there are thoughts that are entering, are they increasing or decreasing? Is your body tense or relaxed? Now lessening the intense focus of that spot, and just breathe and notice how things are going on, what's going on. Sound, movement, but perhaps less attention isn't necessary at this point. Just presently abiding in the spaciousness and the free mind.
Now staying with that spaciousness, recall the image of the individual or the group who you were sending Tonglen to. Noticing that dark suffering you pull in on that pointed on your in-breath. But how it transitions to bright, loving kindness on your out-breath through all 360 pores of your body. How that light, loving kindness energy gives support and comfort to those you're sending it to. You're in the merit of your practice with this bright, loving kindness that goes through to the individuals. Let's stay with this for one more minute.
So once again, I'm inviting you to notice your body. Notice the difference in your meditation this time. The shifting from the elements to this single pointed focus. How did it change for you, or did it change for you? Was it easier or harder to find that calm, abiding place? Did you notice thoughts coming in? And if so, were you able to let them go, or did they invade you? Were you distracted by sounds and movement? Or did you simply not even hear them? that meditation was longer. It was longer. And as we get ready to do the third and final meditation, I'll invite you to just readjust yourself. This time, I'll do what Venerable did, which was considered more of a Vajrayana approach. And I'm going to read a section of the King of Prayers. And once again, we'll settle, allow ourselves to just let go of whatever it is that you're starting to feel, maybe because of the second meditation, or as it's getting near the end of our time, or whatever, but try to bring yourself back to this place. And we'll once again begin. I shall manifest upon one single atom the array of pure lands, present, past, and future. Likewise, I shall enter the array of pure Buddha fields in every direction without exception. I shall enter the very presence of all my guides, those lights of this world and who are yet to appear, those sequentially turning the wheels of complete awakening, those who reveal nirvana, final, perfect peace. May I achieve the power of swift magical emanation, the power to lead to the great vehicle through every approach, the power of always beneficial activity, the power of love pervading all realms, the power of all surpassing merit, the power of supreme knowledge unobstructed by discrimination, and through the powers of wisdom, skillful means, and samadhi, may I achieve the perfect power of awakening, purifying the power of all contaminated actions, crushing the power of disturbing emotions at their root, diffusing the power of interfering forces. I shall perfect the power of the Bodhisattva practice. May I purify an ocean of worlds. May I free an ocean of beings. May I clearly see an ocean of Dharma. May I realize an ocean of pristine wisdom. May I purify an ocean of activities. May I fulfill an ocean of aspirations. May I make offerings to an ocean of Buddhas. May I practice without discouragement for an ocean of eons.
Our final session. As you breathe in the darkness, let that power referred to support the clear, loving kindness, bright light that emanates through you in support of those who are suffering. Again, on the in-breath, the dark energy of suffering from those you're supporting. And on the out-breath, clear, bright, loving kindness, supported by the power we just spoke of. Dark energy on the in-breath, supporting compassionate, loving kindness on the out breath. Through all the pores of your body. Let that loving kindness, compassion flow. One more minute, the dark energy in. The support of loving kindness emanating out.
Mm. This whole process that we just went through was about 30 minutes. 3 different meditation methods. And yet landing in the same place of calm abiding, perhaps. As Venerable mentioned, your meditation is often about who you are, what's right for you, what helps you get to a place of calm abiding. These 3, again, the first one was on the elements, allowing yourself to use the elements to extinguish thoughts, depending on how you're feeling, what you're thinking, what your experiences are. Elements don't need it, not necessary. Anapanasati is single-pointed. And then this last one, reading the King of Prayers, and all of them including Tonglen. You can get to Tonglen all sorts of ways. The key is that balance. 4 immeasurables that you can work with, that can support you, and that you can carry out into the world. So I'm going to give us just one more minute for you to really think for yourself, your experience today. What really resonated with you, if any of it? Perhaps there's another one that we haven't done on Tuesday or today that better resonates with you. It's the outcome. And certainly as we travel these meditations into Tonglen, gives us an opportunity to bring in and to let go and bring out. Brian, do you have some thoughts? No?
No.
Okay. I specifically chose not to use this time as a way to share and engage. I wanted this to be a time for just you to notice, to wonder, to experience. I especially appreciate all of you, my Sangha. It's been quite a while since I've been in the chair. And as much as I appreciate it, my attachment always arises too. Instead of asking for someone to give merit, I will. And I will share the 4 limitless states of mind that I read earlier. May all living beings always be peaceful and happy and maintain the causes of peace and happiness. Loving kindness. May all living beings always be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. Compassion. May all living beings always be free from suffering, and my own heart be delighted about this. Sympathetic joy. May all living beings stay far away from greed and anger and abide in non-differentiating generosity, equanimity. Sadhu.